Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Just on 8:12, as we get you woken up this Monday morning, 22nd day of January 2024. I can't believe it's going so quick. A very good morning now to Dubbo Region Mayor Matthew Dickinson. Is it too late to say Happy New Year, Mr. Mayor?
I'd love to say Happy New Year, and Happy New Year to you and all your listeners. Of course, the first time we've talked on 2FM this year. But it's an interesting one, isn't it? How late into January or early February do you keep saying Happy New Year when it's the first time you run into someone? I don't know the protocol around that one.
Well, that's right. I get into trouble up here at the radio station from my colleague Ian, because I say late. For example, we played the late Michael Jackson earlier today, but how long do you say that?
Yeah, true.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, it is. All these problems we've got to solve. What are we going to do about it, Brett?
I know. Well, maybe we can sort of get through it throughout the year and bring up interesting topics. Now, one of the things that we like to touch on at the beginning of the year, even though it's so late in January, is what council's got set up for the remainder of the year. What do you hope to accomplish, or is there anything that you hope to accomplish?
Yes, certainly. Thanks, Brett. Lots of things we hope to accomplish.
Yeah,
there's a few things happening. One of the things I suppose that I'd look at is some of the infrastructure projects that we've got that have been ticking away, and we hope to finalise some of those this year. People will have noticed the shared pathway behind Ollie Robbins Oval. That's progressing quite well. We should have that shared pathway finished by March. Of course, that's interrupted walkers around Track O'Reilly, but once that's open, people will see that that's well and truly been worth it. And then as a part of that, we've got the funding approvals to do the events precinct. So that'll be on Ollie Robbins Oval to create an events precinct around that whole area there. So that'll change that quite dramatically. So that's pretty exciting. The Old Dubbo Jail, of course, the Heritage Plaza at the front of Old Dubbo Jail, that got held up, as you'd remember, because we found some things underground. They probably went a little bit deeper than we were hoping to go, and found some things underground that we had to stop all work and inspect some of those just to make sure we understood fully the heritage implications of those, and then hopefully we'll continue on with that. And so that's a really big project. The other exciting project, I think, is the Redry Cultural Tourism Centre. Now, we haven't got the final go-ahead for the funding of that yet. We've got an application in. We've got most of our funding lined up, but the federal government is the last funding application or last piece of the jigsaw puzzle to fall into place. And if that falls into place, we'll be able to go full steam ahead with the Redry Cultural Tourism Centre, which I think will be an absolutely fantastic facility. But again, not sure about that one yet. So there's a few of the big projects in terms of infrastructure. A couple of the big sporting projects will be our New South Wales Lawn Bowls State Championships. They typically hold these state championships in a metropolitan area. They have done for the entire history. This is the first time they're bringing out to real regional. And when I say real regional, they do go up above and below Sydney a little bit, up towards Newcastle and down towards Wollongong. But as we know, Brett, some people will think they're regional areas, but we don't really consider those regional areas. So this is a pretty exciting concept. And we've got that for 3 years. We've got that this year. Next year, it'll go back to Metro. Then we've got it again in 2026 and again in 2028. And of course, the New South Wales Junior State Cup Northern Conference, which we held in Dubbo last year, we'll see that held again. Actually, that's at the end of February. That's not that far away. And that'll have another 7,000 people come into Dubbo for that event. And that'll be held this year, next year, and the year after in Dubbo.
Geez, we've got a few great things that you're chasing up. You must be happy with the team when it comes to, the regional events team, because they work really hard behind the scenes to attract these sorts of events to Dubbo, don't they? Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And when I talk about some of those events that are huge events, 7,000 people, those type of events, what we can't forget about is that Dubbo gets a huge benefit from lots of smaller events. One of the things that's our bread and butter is when we've got small sporting events that might have 300 or 400 people, small conferences that might have 100 people. Lots of those events carry on throughout the year, and they are, as I say, the bread and butter. Lots of those events, even though they don't get the publicity that an event like the touch footy event might get, then we still rely on lots of those events coming through, going to our conference centres, using our sporting facilities, our athletics centre, for example. Having those events going through on a constant basis really keeps our economy ticking over.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to a couple of other things. I've noticed that council is asking residents to monitor water consumption this summer. Obviously, we've experienced another hot weekend. It's another hot weekend. People just want to cool down. But there is a certain way that we can look after that and try to maintain that now.
We do want to cool down. We also want to look after our gardens, and that's about a third of the usage of our water goes into our gardens, which is fantastic. People are very house proud. But if you want to keep an eye on that, there's a great app called the Water Portal app, which you can download. And if you're living in what I would call the city limits, if you like, of Dubbo or Wellington, there's about a 99.9% chance you've already had a smart meter installed. And that allows you to see your water usage, and each day that's updated. And then you can get a report, and I've been playing around with it over the last month or so, where I've actually set up very low thresholds deliberately so I get the reports come through. So I get warnings each day that I've had high water usage. I get weekly warnings about high water usage, and you can get that via email, you can get that via text, or you can just log on to the app and look at your water usage anytime. Keep in mind, it is updated a day after, so you won't be able to see your water usage today while you're using it, but tomorrow you can see what you did yesterday. So effectively, it gives you that 1 day delay, but a good way to keep an eye on your water usage. Change what you're doing, tell the kids to have shorter showers, whatever it might be, and then you can check how that water usage changes.
So it really does sort of kick into some action what your habits at home are. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly right. And one of the things that people often talk about, if you treasure it, then you measure it. And that's one of the things we're talking about here. If you're worried about your water usage, you don't need to wait until your rates notice comes in and then say, oh my gosh, we used more water than we thought we did. You could go outside and flick open your water meter and have a look at the reading and write that down and look at it again the next day. But that's all a bit clumsy. Having an app on your phone seems like a pretty convenient way to keep an eye on that water usage.
And you guys have pointed out here, as in council, not you guys, that's a bit rude of me, one drip from a tap every second wastes over 12,000 litres of water per year, depending on how quick that is running. I think that's what per second you said.
One drip per second will use 12,000 litres a year. Now, when you consider that, that's a lot of water, but keep in mind, we've got to treat that water and you'll get charged for that water. So it's a benefit to you as an individual user to make sure you've got no leaks around the house. And obviously you multiply that 12,000 litres across multiple people across the community. That's a lot more water we've got to put through our water treatment plant than we would need to do. And so looking at the Water Portal app, you can keep an eye on things. And it's not so much that you'll pick up one tap dripping, but if you do have a high leak or somewhere, for example, if you went away on holidays for a week and you checked your Water Portal app and you went, well, we're using water, we're not even there, what's going on? You might find that you've got a leak somewhere in your house.
Yeah, for sure. Matt, I want to turn my attention to something that we talked about last year, which has popped up, and this is regarding the Conservatorium of Music. You've got a quick update for us?
Just a quick update there. The building at 139 Darling Street, which is the old carpet building next to the theatre, that was one that council agreed in April last year to lease to the Conservatorium of Music for a peppercorn rate, because we don't want to lose the Conservatorium from Dubbo. It's a very important facility. So there was a bit of debate about that at the time. You may remember the Department of Education had basically told the Conservatorium that the building they were in, they would need to move out of that building in the short term. There were different dates thrown around. It might have been within a few months, but it was definitely by the end of 2023. And so council agreed to lease them that. That was a 5-year lease at a peppercorn rate with another option for 5 years after that. Now, they were going to have to do the fit out for that. That was their expense, but we were giving them that at a peppercorn rate. We're here now in January, and that lease hasn't been taken up yet. The Department of Education apparently didn't want to get back into that building as quickly as they had initially indicated. And so we're still talking to the Conservatorium of Music about whether they still need that particular building or whether they'll have a long-term ability to stay where they are with the Department of Education. So that's an ongoing process. People that are interested in it at the time may have noticed, though, that carpet building doesn't have anyone in there. So we'll continue those discussions. We didn't put an end date on that offer for a peppercorn lease when we first did that through council, because we thought there'd be no need for that because they were so urgent to get in there. We might need to go back and revisit that and put some sort of end time frame on that.
Are you surprised that they haven't reached out to you? I mean, given that, we're just in January perhaps things have slowed down a bit for them, or were you expecting to hear back from them because of the urgency?
We have been talking to them along the way. Certainly we've been in communication, constant communication with them, because again, yes, we thought they'd take that up as quickly as possible. And there were a few conditions that they were talking about in the early days of that. But as it's turned out, again, the urgency has been taken out of it. But for how long, we don't know. And the Department of Education hasn't given a clear indication to them. It may well be that if the Department of Ed said you can have that building for the next 10 years, they probably wouldn't need to move anywhere in the next 10 years. But if they said, well, we didn't do it by the end of last year, but definitely by June this year, for example, you've definitely got to move out, then they need to take up that offer. So we need to just clarify that, because we don't want to have a public building, a building that the community owns effectively in that 139 Darling Street. We don't want to have that sitting there, not being utilised and not being utilised indefinitely.
All right, I'm quickly out of time, but I wanted to talk about Australia Day events. Of course, a public holiday coming up for us.
Indeed, I'll very quickly run through those times. 6:30 p.m. in Wellington on Thursday, the 25th of January, in Cameron Park is where you'll see the Australia Day celebrations there. And we've got Reece Muldoon as our ambassador for that one. And then on Friday, the 26th of January, staying at 8 a.m. to try and beat the heat, because it will be hot this week. We've got the Australia Day celebrations in Victoria Park in Dubbo, and Sam Cawthorn is our ambassador there. Both events will be fantastic. I encourage people to make it to one or both events if they wish.
All right, well, that's where we'll have to leave it. Thank you so much, and it's nice to have you back on deck for the remainder of the year. Every fortnight we'll catch up with the Dubbo Region Mayor, Matt Dickerson. We'll talk to you really soon. Hopefully it'll be in studio one of these days.
Absolutely right. Thanks, Brett.
Thanks very much, Matt. Just on 24 past 8.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.